to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It's a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It's time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. Tonight's special episode. Episode 332. 332 episodes of the show. Can you believe it? I can barely believe it. I'm on this show. This is an exciting time. I'm very excited to talk to this dude, Dave Lombardo, incredible drummer. He put out a great record recently called Rites of Percussion. He's played in some pretty stellar bands: Fantomas, Slayer, Dead Cross, Mr. Bungle. Now now in their thrash era, fashionably late to the thrash era, and so excited to talk to him about all this stuff. Just a hell of a guy by all accounts, and I'm really stoked to be doing that. So before we get into that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer who's been touring and recording for 23 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron's Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 332. This is your first time listening to the show. Archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. If you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around on the internet, or even just leave a review. All that helps people discover the show, beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. Here we are. So, that's enough ado. So with no further ado whatsoever, let's talk to Mr. Dave Lombardo. Dave, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
This is a killer record, this Rites of Percussion record.
It's great.
I was, the first thing I thought of was what it was. It's like, is this him just doing like cool percussion stuff and drums? I'm like, oh, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
All right. What gave you the idea for doing this? It's kind of like somewhat left field, I guess, right?
Well, actually, I mean, it started a long time ago, and the idea was, fueled by John Bonham and one of the Led Zeppelin's last release, which was Coda.
Yeah.
And on that particular album, John Bonham had written a piece that was never released, prior to that. And it was a song called Bonzo's Mantra. And the piece was basically all drums, and steel drums were the only melodic instrument there. And it was a beautiful piece. And, when I first heard that, I felt, why hasn't anybody created a body of work like this?
Yeah.
So, you fast forward to about, let's say, when I first discovered the record, which I honestly don't remember. Fast forward to probably 97, 98, when I met Mike Patton, and, we talked about Fantomas. We were just starting to record Fantomas, the very first album, and
the one that has the pages as the titles.
Yeah.
Real easy to remember. Hey, play that one. Page 75. Play that one.
Page 75, right? Oh man, that was a challenge. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
whole
Sorry, I
other
didn't mean to
story.
derail you. I wanted
Yeah,
to
no,
point
no,
that
no,
out.
it's okay. I'm getting good at this, staying on
Yeah, yeah,
point.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Turns out you're a pro. Who knew?
So, I brought up the idea to him, and he said, "Interesting." He said, "Have you heard of Tito Puente?" Tito Puente
Yeah.
is a Latin jazz percussionist who I was very aware of because my mom and dad, used to listen to his albums, when I was a kid, and he's also from the Caribbean, and so he turned me on to this album called Top Percussion.
Right.
And in I think the first probably 5-6 songs are very traditional Afro-Caribbean rhythms and chants, and then later at the end of the record, there are these pieces, these pieces of music, but it's just drums, and it's him recording, let's say one track, and then he'll come in and record another track and another track, all layering and building and creating this montage of drum sounds. And so I found that very inspiring. And Patton said, "You should create a record like this." And he said, "I'll put it out on my label." Now, let me tell you, this is back in '98.
Right.
So,
Okay. Really? Wow. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
And so
that's awesome to have that vote of confidence too, and to know that you have someplace where it can go other than just into the
something
void.
as bizarre, something as bizarre as this, it had a home. So it took. I wasn't in the right headspace at the time.
Sure.
I wasn't living, in the best of, I wasn't living my best life. And so there was a lot of obstructions until about, 2008. And I eventually, got myself out of that negative environment. And then good old 2020 hit. And here we are. We are in the middle of pandemic. And once that hit, I was just, I told myself, you know what? This is it. It's time.
Yeah.
And so
it's almost like the universe taking a lot of effort to tell you something.
Well, shit, I was, think about it. I'm being pulled in like 5-6 different directions, whether it's touring or recording, and, which I love to do both. And, but this put the brakes on everything. The pandemic put the brakes on everything. And I was just, okay, this is the perfect time. And I buckled down. I invested in some really good gear. Utilized my house I had 2 drum sets. One drum set was downstairs in a big cavernous room, and that was like the 4-piece drum set. And then I called that the living drums, because obviously it was like in the living room, dining room area. And then,
behold, the living drum. Yeah,
the living drum. It gets better. And then upstairs, I isolated a room and tried to, mute it and soundproof it as best as possible. And I called that the dead room. And I had the double bass drum set in there.
Nice.
And a plethora of percussion that I've accumulated through the years. And, I'm a big fan of the art of engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. You've recorded some great records. You worked with some great engineers, and I was very impressed with your contribution on Toshi Kasai's Plan D as well. I thought that was super cool.
I love that. Yeah, and so I really love engineering, and so I invested in some microphones and computer and all kinds of software, and I just went in, educated myself on a lot of different recording platforms and plugins, and just got as creative as one could get.
Right.
And this is what I birthed.
This is the result. So had you ever messed around with like 4 tracks or anything along those lines before back in the day? So you had like a basic functionary understanding of
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first got my the very first drum set that I ever owned. It was a little $350 5-piece drum set.
Nice.
And my dad bought me. A friend of mine across the street, who was an aspiring engineer, brought over a little tiny mixer that you put 4 microphones in, and it went to one input, so it can go into your little cassette.
Sure, yeah,
a little cassette. It was a Radio Shack. I don't know. I looked it up the other day. It's like, man, I should buy that just to have it
around as a conversation piece, even like,
exactly.
check this out, and everyone who's ever recorded will be excited about it.
Right. And so my interest in engineering has been ever since that moment. And actually, when Slayer, say I met the guys in Slayer, I think summer of my 11th grade year, going into 12th grade. Right. So I was like 16, 17 years old. And, when you get into high school, they start taking you to different colleges, different schools. What do you want to be? When you get out of here, what do you want to do? What do you want to study? And I didn't know Slayer was going to take off,
right. Well, how could you? Because I mean, it's one thing. There's plenty of bands that are great, but sometimes it's like you hit the zeitgeist. Luck is a big factor in it as well. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine you had any conception of like, I'm going to go play drums in a famous metal band at the time. No, I mean, right?
No, there was nothing like that. So I had applied at a school. This place in the Hollywood called it was called Crossroads of the World, but there was an engineering school in there. In this complex, and I applied. I remember getting all the documents and everything to fill out, and all the brochures and pamphlets, and but instead, life said, Dave, you're not going to college.
That may not be in the cards for you, bud. Yeah.
You're going on tour.
Yeah. So, that's huge. And that's, especially to have it at such a young age too, where you're kind of, I feel like our entire culture is like, have a fallback plan.
That's basically what it was. Sure. My dad saying, you better get a job. I don't harbor, bums. Basically.
You think hitting these drums are going to pay the rent? It's not. Yeah. Exactly.
Especially, being 18 years old.
Yeah,
or 17, 18 years old. He used to tell me, man, I've been working since I was 10.
Right.
But so yeah, and
but you always had an interest in recording. So when and I want to get back to the drum record because I think it's really interesting because I think it's a good example of how drums can be and are musical. I think drums often are, obviously they're given credit for keeping the beat and percussive ability, but there is a musicality to drums.
Depending who plays it.
Your words, and I agree with them.
And whether they're actually playing them or or if they're using triggers. Because triggers is basically the CGI of drums. You look like you're like out in space and like in CGI, but then in reality you're just dangling from a rope. So
and there's the human behind it, and how so many people's favorite drummers that they can name, they all have like a distinct feel. Like think of like a Charlie Watts or like Phil Rudd or something along those lines, where maybe they're not the flashiest dudes, but like you can instantly tell who that is, like immediately.
And that's the beauty of it, beauty of having like an original sound or not relying on those, on triggers and things like that.
I like triggers as the CGI of drumming is pretty good. I like it.
It can be helpful. Let's say if there's like just a regular a rock musician, that just doesn't hit so hard, but hit as hard as maybe the band needs for him to hit, or whatever, it might help. But when you abuse it like a lot of rock and metal musicians use it today. I think it's kind of disheartening. You lose the feel, and everybody's using the same sample.
Right, so it all kind of sounds uniform, right? Exactly. That's and that's
the same.
I think that's going to be something we notice a lot more as history goes on, where there's going to be this whole era of music. It'll be like, remember when everyone's using auto-tune on everything, and it's like just because
Cher. I'll never forget when Cher used that.
That's right.
Auto-tune. It's like, what the fuck is that?
Cher? Who gave her an auto-tune? Yeah, but I think it's funny because there is and I like that we're talking about home recording and stuff as well, because I think there's been this major jump in technology that allows people to express their creativity in certain ways. But by the same token, there is nothing like the sound of drums being played in a room. You can have the best sample sets in the world. Like, it'll get the point across. You can like make a great demo. Some people can even make records of it. Peace and love in my heart. But for me, and for my taste, drums in a room, preferably a good sounding room, but just drums in a room, well mic'd and well produced, nothing like it.
Nothing. No. It resonates. It vibrates your inner core. There's something about it. When drums are tuned correctly, and let's say tuned to the actual band that you're playing in, at least close to the actual either root note or overtone of the room. Once you dial that in, it's magic. It's really, it cuts through. You don't need volume. You don't need triggers. As long as you know how to tune your drums correctly, you could, get what you need. Yeah. Without all the electronics and hoopla.
Was Show No Mercy your first recording? Was that the first album that you recorded?
That was the first album I recorded, and but the song "Aggressive Perfector" that was on on Metal Massacre 2 or 3. That I believe we recorded that sometime in the spring of '83, and then Brian Slagle from Metal Blade said, "Hey, I want you guys to record an album." And so sometime right after I graduated, we went into the studio and recorded Show No Mercy, and it was released December of '83. So I hadn't even turned 19.
Yeah, you're still a young cat. Did you even know how to tune your drums at that point? Or did you have to pick that up?
No shit. I didn't even know how to tell. I didn't know how to tell the engineer to fuck off when he said, "Hey Dave, I want you to overdub the cymbals because your cymbals are so loud.
Right?
They bleed into the tom mics."
Yeah.
And so that album, I recorded the cymbals separate from the actual drums. I had to put T-shirts and tape cloth around the cymbals. And then with headphones, overdub the crashes, and but hey, nobody knew at that time how to record a metal band of that speed, with the kind of drums that I had, and the cymbals were very, they were loud. They eat that whole
range of frequency.
Too.
Like, I mean, it's cymbals eat guitars, right? That's like the big saying. Well, and I've heard of people doing that, and it just always seems like so alien to be like, okay, we're gonna be playing the drums but not the cymbals. Okay.
Yeah, it was rough.
It was bizarre.
Rough, and you could hear it.
Yeah,
but that's how we did it, and those albums, all of the albums except, I think, for parts of Christ Illusion and parts of World Painted Blood, were all recorded without a click track.
Yeah.
So we went in, everything was well rehearsed, and we captured all those moments and everything, and without any, click track triggers or any help of any kind of computers, because it didn't exist.
It wasn't there. How would you have it? Yeah, there was no ability to have it. Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody, nothing.
Well, and I'm trying to think like around 83. What? So what else Kill 'Em All is like around that same time. I mean, like there's not a lot even like to be like, oh yeah, like this to point to Judas Priest, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, and
and they were in the best studios,
right?
Obviously in England or wherever they were in the world, they were already on top of their game.
They had resources that a young Slayer did not. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Peace and love in my heart.
Those records obviously, sounded and were amazing. And ours, we were still developing. And again, we weren't a 4/4 groove kind of band,
Not at all. Yeah.
We were pushing, 180, 200 beats per minute. And then later, I think we maxed out at about 210. So to try to capture that was difficult. And the one person that did capture the band in its best form was Rick Rubin.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like that's talk about a guy that like got it, right? It's like, oh, yeah, fantastic.
He said, let's strip away all of the reverb, all the ambient stuff.
Yeah.
And let's just focus on a dead, dry sound. And it makes total sense.
Right, because when you have like a very sparse drum thing, like you have like a John Bonham levy breaks or something, you're gonna want that room sound. It sounds fantastic. But when you're just like like it's
not gonna work.
Yeah, it sounds mushy.
Yeah, it's gonna sound like mashed potatoes, man.
Precisely. And and I think it's so funny because nobody really knew. Nobody really knew how to do that at the time because it just was so like it hadn't really been a thing that had happened. I'm sure you have like people like dallying in faster stuff, but even then around that time nobody knew how to record it, and I feel like especially not how to record it on a budget for sure. So. No. Just be like, hey, let's record this differently. Like it seems so obvious now, but yeah, which I like. I like those early records, but they're kind of weird sounding too. By the same token, they sound.
Right.
And in the way that like I love Gang of Four, like Entertainment, one of my favorite records of all time. Objectively weird sounding record, just sounds weird, and I couldn't imagine any other way. But
there's some albums that do sound great in their primitive form. Yeah. And that's what you need to embrace from those records, man. And just like I embrace, the old Slayer catalog. Yeah, it's because they have a bit of magic in them. There's something special about them, and Absolutely. It's because with the technology we had at the time, how naive we were. Whether it was tuning, or the engineer or his. Incompetence
or just we'll just charitably say maybe lack of context.
That's putting it in a sweet way.
Yeah that's I'm being very charitable. Yeah
Better you than me.
Right exactly. But then it also occurs to me, so by the time you get to Hell Awaits, so that's the second album, and I've been lucky enough, I've had Trey and Trevor from Bungle both on, and actually to talk about Easter Bunny, and he brought up that like that's how Bungle started, right? Like they were like covering Hell Awaits and all the other thrash stuff at the time in Eureka in Humboldt, which is great, and it's like and now you get to as men of a certain age, now you get to do that for real with those actual dudes, which is great. When you were making, because for Slayer, I think I like the first record, but Hell Awaits is kind of like where they started being sort of a statement of intent. It kind of seemed like you guys had it like more figured at that point. Not as much as like with Rain and Blood, but it seems like, oh no, you know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, and you're going for it. And even if not everything is in place, like it's very clear that the road is mapped out. Is that, am I off base here at all?
No, you're not.
Okay.
No, we had done some touring. We obviously were listening to other bands and what they were doing. So yeah, we were learning and we were applying that knowledge.
Yeah, and that's the key. Especially if you're going to grow. and do stuff. And so when you make that, like, what? You're barely in your 20s at that point. You make that, right? Like you're still. That's amazing.
I was 19. I think, yeah. Rain and Blood. I recorded that when I was 21.
Yeah, and you're running around with like Venom and Exodus at the time, right?
Yeah.
Was that like an immediate common cause? Like, these guys are doing a similar thing. Or was it kind of like not that way?
We had already, met Exodus, early on, like, a couple years before that. And I think in our first like California tour, we hooked up with Exodus, and we immediately became great friends. And but we all had one common thread, is that we loved Venom.
Yeah.
And man, that was amazing meeting those guys. Unfortunately, Mantis didn't show up. I don't remember who filled in, but Abaddon and Kronos were there, and they played all the hits. But
yeah, sure.
We played our show. We got off stage and we were drinking and raging, and I don't think we watched one full set of that.
You're just having a blast, man.
We were having a great time. So we just didn't care.
But when that's a very interesting time for that genre of music too, and for those types of bands, because it kind of did seem like it was all sort of coming together. These they're bands that were like metal, but like this kind of more extreme version of it that were kind of became influential on its own, really.
Venom, you're talking about Venom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
well, I mean, both, I guess. But yeah, Venom is like the musicians band from that era. Even though, like, I don't know if history is the mainstream culture necessarily ever got Venom. But,
right? No, they didn't. Nobody did. No.
Maybe the kids are listening to Venom, and I don't know. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that did it feel like? Was there like an excitement in the air? Like, did you feel like it was like, this could like kind of break a little bigger than it is now at the time?
What, that particular tour?
Yeah, just in general, like that type of music, what Slayer was doing, any of these cohort bands.
Looking back, I think at the time we were just going with the flow and not really understanding the level of growth that genre was taking, and the bands, themselves, including Slayer. We were pretty naive and innocent, and we were just doing it. We were playing in front of the crowds, were getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And but at a slow pace. It wasn't, like we immediately, like, one hit wonders, from zero to the top, and then all of a sudden you don't hear about them again.
Where are they now? Yeah.
Where are they now? Oh, I remember that.
What happened to those guys? They still around? Yeah.
Yeah. And so everything was just slow and gradual, and which I liked better than, the one hit wonder.
It's sustainable. It's easier to keep your head on straight too.
Yeah, it's true. So it was an interesting time, and a lot of fun.
Well, I don't want to stay mired just in the 80s, but how did Rick Rubin enter the picture and Def Jam and all that? Like how did that all come together? Do you remember?
I had heard through the grapevine. I don't know who contacted me or contacted someone in the band. And someone in the band might have said, yeah, some guy in New York that works for a major label is interested in the band.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, is anybody going to reach out? Well, they didn't leave a number. We don't know. We don't know exactly. It's somebody at Columbia.
Yeah.
And his name is Rick Rubin. So I took that information and I contacted Columbia in New York City. And I was directed to Def Jam Records. And at that point, I think when I told the band that I reached out, they had said, well, Dave, I mean, we're already signed to Metal Blade. And I was like, really? We have a major label that's interested in us. So I set up a meeting with the band and Rubin. Rubin showed up at my mom and dad's house, where I was living, with a famous photographer, notable photographer named Glenn E. Friedman.
Oh, of course.
Who was
Yes,
a
yes.
punk rock photographer, skateboard. So Rick Rubin and Glenn Friedman show up at my mom and dad's house, and then we caravanned over to Tom Araya's house, and that's where we all met. So it went from there. He bought the band out of the deal with
Metal Blade.
With Metal Blade, and we ended up going with American Recordings, or Def Jam at the time.
Which seemed to work okay.
Really cool. Which was really, it was really cool because they were known for rap artists,
yeah,
comedians.
Yeah, that's right. Because the Beastie Boys record, that big one, had that had come out at that point, right? If I remember correctly.
No, it didn't come out.
It was about to come out, but the one, what was the one before that? But yeah, it was sort of like, oh, really? That's interesting. But it was also like Rick Rubin was also just getting like starting to get a rep for, he just works with people he likes.
Yes.
And like that was kind of the beginning of that, where it was like, oh, Slayer, huh? Okay, that's an interesting pairing.
Yeah, it was really cool because there was, after we had recorded it, we all went to New York City and stayed for a couple of days for I believe it was the mixing process. And in that studio, mixing, there were 3 albums being mixed: Licensed to Ill, the one Run DMC album that broke.
I cannot remember the name I love it. I can't remember the name for the life of me right now. But I know what you're talking about.
Picture it. I can't remember it either. And Slayer. And there's a photograph of Run DMC, Slayer, and Beastie Boys all together, and Rick Rubin in the picture as well.
Didn't Carrie do like a guitar solo on like one of those Beastie Boys songs? If I remember? Yeah.
That's where it happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so for Rain and Blood, like around that time, had you been playing those songs out live already before the record?
I believe so. Yeah.
So
we were, before it was released, because there was a day, there was a release date. I think we were it was recorded, I think, late 85, early 86 for a potential release in April. And then once the one of the executives over at Columbia caught wind of one of the songs, which was Angel of Death.
Yeah.
How it was about the Holocaust and, about the murderer that he is.
Yeah. Real radio-friendly song.
He thought,
hey, what this thing about Mangala? It's going to be a top 40 hit.
Yeah, it's a top 40 hit, right? That's exactly what we want. And
sell out. So yeah, sure.
Of course, it didn't bode well. It didn't bode well with his, with his heritage. And he nixed it. He said no, but he failed to understand that it's just it was just a story. It wasn't. Yeah,
it wasn't like we think this guy is cool. It was
or Mangala for president. No.
Yeah, no. It was these horrific things that shouldn't be forgotten about.
Yeah. And from a band like Slayer, writing horrific things were our niche.
That's your brand identity. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah. That's. I mean, it's so and my understanding of it is that like nobody was playing it on the radio. I mean, I'm joking about it being top 48. Just for anybody that doesn't know that. I don't. But that said, it was one of the first records that like the punk rockers and the metalheads could both be like, oh yeah, Slayer's great. Like everybody agreed that like, like that was the one. There's like Motorhead and Slayer, and that was about it.
Yeah, which what prompted me to dabble into punk, in the early days, was because I was into Motorhead, and I saw punks wearing Motorhead shirts. Yeah, it's like, wow, what's the common thread here? And and it was just this angry, we make no. We don't compromise, and we're fearless. We do what we want, and that was the punk attitude, and we loved that, and so yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you have like stuff like, when you see the first response for something like Angel of Death or like Raining Blood, right? Like, I mean, that's people have to like lose their minds, right? It's you got to have like, oh, cool, they like that too, right on, kind of reaction, I imagine. But like, I mean, those are two timeless songs in heavy music, right? Like that is into the pantheon of like they're never going away. Like, didn't Tori Amos cover Raining Blood? That was definitely a like, wow, kind of moment.
She thought all along the song was about a woman's menstrual cycle, is what I heard. So.
That rocks. I love that.
Really? Oh, it's
okay.
menstrual cycle. That's what it is.
Guess you can see it. Sure, it's still it counts. But yeah, so the whole record. Again, not getting a lot of radio airplay, but just the grassroots, like the fans are, whether they're buying the records or they're taping and giving to a friend, like it's like wildfire for Slayer. And again, I mean, like I'm just even thinking like you'll still hear like, well, especially like Angel of Death and Raining Blood, you'll hear them in like different movies and things like that, like to this day, like as sort of like a needle drop kind of moment, and that's exciting. I mean, obviously you probably thought that the record turned out pretty well when you finished it, but did you have any idea like the impact that was going to have? I mean, it's kind of world changing.
No, I think I think one of the moments after we released the album, and I believe we had played the Hollywood Palladium, and they had oversold the show.
Yeah.
And they called the riot police. There was an electrical storm and the riot squad outside of the Hollywood Palladium, this venue in Hollywood. And it was surreal because when oh man, my allergies are hitting me again. When the show had ended and they cleared the venue out, I took a walk on the floor, and there were pools of blood everywhere, throughout the venue from all the mosh pits.
Oh, yeah.
I remember specifically looking, and there was a lot out for my drums, which I have the best view in the house.
Right, you can see everybody. Yeah, exactly.
I'm the pirate up on top of the crow's nest.
Yeah, you get like your spyglass. Yeah. Love it.
So I'm able to, I could see, it was a mosh pit, a Mickey Mouse mosh pit. And let me explain. There was a big mosh pit in front of the stage, and then like two little mosh pits on the outer edges.
So it looked like the ears and the...
It looked like the ears and the legs.
That's awesome. I love that.
I'll never forget that. And, just little things like that, man. You realize at that moment, it's like, we're on to something. This is really cool. And then it got to a point where, things were real. We were playing the Ritz in New York City. Then next thing you know, we put out, a couple of other albums, South of Heaven Seasons, and we're playing Madison Square Garden with Megadeth and Anthrax, Clash of the Titans.
That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and even like people respond again. It's that grassroots thing. People even from other countries are like picking up the records and the connecting with it, and again, all without what everyone thought of as the traditional modus operandi, which is, you have to have like a hit song on the radio that everybody plays, and like, no. Not in the cards.
No, not in the cards. Not even one. Not even one.
Which is crazy, because it's not like that they don't have hooks, because that's the thing I think that that I would say for the band, especially band that era, they're hooks galore. It's just that it's propulsive.
It is very propulsive. It's a locomotive, man. It's just a nonstop barrage of intensity. It's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, just because of the intro, I think Angel of Death is one of the longer songs, or Raining Blood. But like, I mean, if the original record like clocks in under 30 minutes, if I remember correctly. Like it's that's awesome.
One cassette We had the entire album on one side of the cassette. So you play the album on one side, flip it over, and it plays again. So
that's like like the same thing with like the Ramones, where you can just like keep going, you know, I'll just play it again, whatever, which is great. I mean, that's the dream, right? I mean, that's the wonderful thing. So when you're thinking about, so Rain of Blood into South of Heavens, you know, it's a couple years, that's 4th record. You work with Rubin again, you know, also great. That's there's a lot of bangers on there. Is there any indication of how much it's grown by the time you get to that record, as far as like the worldwide acclaim for All Things Slayer?
Well, you know, I mean, the shows that we were playing, you know, that's a clear indication. The amount of time that we were on tour, and you know, the venues we were playing, sure, they got bigger, and
that's a good indicator, I guess. Yeah,
that's the one and only indicator. There wasn't anything else. Believe me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was cool. It was great, you know, being a part of that, and you know, it was definitely a nice launch pad for what I wanted to do and continue doing in life, and my creative work and collaborations. And
right, because especially for a lot of musicians around that era, like that could have just been like it, right? It could have been like, oh, they did these great things and that was awesome and everybody loves this. And like you made these timeless music that connects with people to this day. In the same way that people buy that Minor Threat record, like kids, like 15-year-olds buy that every year, right?
Yeah.
And will until the end of time, or recorded music, or until it's just downloaded to your brain, whatever.
Yeah. It harbors an energy. It has a feeling, and it connects with your primal instincts, and that is because it was recorded real, naturally. They were musicians. Yeah. All 4 of us were in a room together recording those songs. It wasn't like I laid down the tracks with a rough guitar track, you know, or anything. No, all of us were in there together. There was a special chemistry amongst each of us. Each of us brought something very special. It could have been subtle. It could have been, you know, whatever it could have been. It was just part of the band's signature sound, and I believe their presentation, there was something special about it.
Were people bringing parts in the room, and were you banging it out all together? Were you like recording things and like referencing them? Like how was the process coming together? As Slayer
the process.
And I specifically mentioned because these days it's very easy to just throw up like a phone or something in like a practice room, and there you go, you're off to the races, right?
Yeah.
But the technology wasn't quite there, and
no, we in the early days we would work out all of the songs in the rehearsal, the rehearsal room, and just you know, and elaborate on the pieces, whatever it is, you know, whoever was bringing their contributions in. You know, we would elaborate on them.
What I love to think about is there being just a moment where like, hey, got this thing. Na 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 na. Like, was it like that?
No.
Okay. I would love it if it was, but I would imagine not.
Jeff Hanneman was a little more advanced than I believe at that time the rest of us. He invested in recording equipment.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
And he would, you know, he had a little 4-track cassette recorder, and he would create these little demos and present it to us. And that's how he did it. On the other hand, you know, Carrie would sit there and have a riff, and then we would, you know, elaborate on the riff and create a structure. But Jeff, you know, he brought in the songs almost complete.
Really?
With
wow.
Melodies and sometimes lyrics.
Impressive. Yeah, that is. I don't think a lot of bands are working that way in that genre
At that time. No. And still don't. You know?
Yeah, I mean, let's get real. Yeah, absolutely. So then you got so is this where is it getting to the point where is it around Seasons of the Abyss that you're like, you know, the guild's off the lily a little bit? Like tell me what the mindset is around that record.
Shit, I don't remember. Honestly, Seasons was I don't remember. I remember tracking Rain and Blood. I remember a little bit of South of Heaven. Seasons is very vague. I remember overdubbing the gong.
Oh right, yeah.
I have a big 38-inch gong that I still have, and I had to do some kind of an overdub for the end of Seasons. And I remember Andy Wallace, the engineer, finding the right position for the microphone and just little details like that, but really not much. I remember Rick Rubin being at whenever I had to do my drum track, whenever I had to record my drum tracks, he was there, and he was, coaching me and saying, "Hey Dave, why don't you try this, try that?" And watching his excitement from the control room whenever I nail like one of my crazy unhinged drum rolls.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'd see him in there. It's like, okay, I impressed the producer. All right, good.
Yeah. Well, it seems, I think one of Rick Rubin's secret superpowers is how genuine his enthusiasm is for when something cool is happening, at least from an outside perspective.
And I was definitely
also his beard these days, but that's another story.
We all aspired to have that beard.
I can't do it, man. I can do these sideburns. That's it. Otherwise, I look like the Unabomber, and it's not a good look.
No, it's not.
Not for me. Not
trending.
It's bad. Yeah, I hope not. Jesus. But yeah, so all right. So you got Rubin in your corner, right? And I think that's one of the great album closers, by the way. Title track of that song is like, and that includes the gong, frankly.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like it's over. All right. Yeah. Here it is. So, and at this point, I think that one went gold, right? Like that was a pretty popular one. Like Slayer's got a niche, and it's a good one. I guess we I remember Slayer being invoked a lot with the whole PMRC and these kids, the satanic music and yada yada, which sounds adorable compared to the problems we have these days, where it's like, oh no, that was our biggest problem, is that like we have these religious people that were like
we still have problems with.
We still have them, yeah, but it's more direct now. They're not going after records; they're just literally going.
No, they're coming for us all, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty mind numbing, but. I think it's fascinating that from an outside perspective, like 1990, that was like right 1990, where it was like right before Nirvana hit, and they had like there was like the gold rush for like weirdos and weird music.
Yeah.
What was that like from your perspective, like that era of the 90s? And I'm thinking, and I'm super excited to talk about Fantomas, because I love Fantomas. I think Fantomas is so in all its epochs of time, beautiful, just wonderful stuff, and a perfect expression of the musicians involved and Patton's Pattonness. But talk to me about those early 90s, man. Like what was going on with you around that time?
Well, first off, I heard Nirvana's Nevermind album. Nevermind, right? That was
that was the big one. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was kind of the Melvins-y sounding one before that, kind of Bleach, but that was like if you had to be kind of, I didn't know about it. I lived in Modesto. I was know about anything.
Yeah, I didn't know about them. I didn't know about Nirvana, and I really didn't know at that time about the Melvins either.
Yeah.
And so I remember being in the studio with Slayer during South of Heaven, Seasons, and Andy Wallace bringing in a recording of the Nevermind album and listening to some of it. Hey, check this out.
Yeah.
I was floored by the guitar tones, drum tone, similar to how when I first heard the White Stripes and their sound and how dirty it was, and I was like, whoa, this is different. This is exciting, and it had good structure, melodies, the vocals sounded great, and so I was intrigued, but I didn't know that was going to be the beginning of the decline of metal music. Everything just metal went underground. You
didn't think it was going to crack the earth open necessarily like it did.
Yeah, that's what happened. And I was really disappointed. There's a lot of Beavis and Butthead fans, which
sure,
I get it. But for me, it was a knock at metalheads. It was making metalheads look brain dead.
Oh, you think so? Okay. No, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Kind of the way I perceived it. And so I really, the genre I felt was changing and becoming the direction of musicians and what they were creating wasn't doing anything for me. And, although there was a lot of, great stuff, but the majority really it wasn't cutting edge. It wasn't evolving. They were just, taking from what they had already heard and already experienced and what was already out there. And, but just performed by a different vocalist, different guitar player, different leads, and different sound in general. But it was basically the same thing. So I was a little disillusioned in the direction of metal and where it was going. And luckily, I left the band because then I was...
That was right when your kid was born too, right? Like
right.
At the same time, yeah.
Yeah, which nowadays it's like, oh, you're taking a leave of absence? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you leave it,
How dare you betray us in this manner?
Yeah. Now I see it all over the place, and I'm like,
yeah, it's
wow.
pretty common now. That's I dare say that's actually like a good evolution. Where it's like, oh yeah, you can still be a human, and it turns out. So
yeah, but not back then.
No, not back
then. Anyways, so I left the band, and I discovered industrial music.
Sure.
And
yeah.
I got into Ministry. I got into Revolting Cocks. I got into Pigface. I got into so many different.
God, Martin is such a sorry to interrupt you. Martin Atkins, what a badass dude! Like,
I love Martin Atkins. Yeah. We're
and
friends.
A character as well.
He sent me a new reissue of the Pigface Fook album, which is one of my favorites. Then I got into Nine Inch Nails, KMFDM,
sure.
not Agnostic Front.
Noted industrial band Agnostic Front. Yes.
Yeah. Frontline Assembly.
Yeah.
So I got into a different style of music, and
sure.
then I had to start a new band, and I started Grip Incorporated,
right,
and everything just started evolving from there.
So, is it at the time? Were you, because again, you're, like in a family way, right? Where are you thinking about it in terms of like, oh, I have to find the next thing that's going to allow me to continue to do this? Or were you like, I need to find the best thing because everyone else is kind of going by this rule book that the idea of a rule book seemed absurd from the early on,
Well, I was lucky enough to have discovered an amazing vocalist called Gus Chambers. He was like an OG punk rocker from England, but he was a brilliant lyricist. And I met him through a friend of a friend. And then I met Valdemar Sarikta, and somehow it all just came together, and we created like 4 or 5 amazing, metal albums, but it was a little different.
Yeah.
And I had a little more creative input. I was, more involved in the songwriting, so it was definitely basically my band.
Yeah.
So I was able to definitely get that out. And then then Patton calls me.
Right. So do you know him from the Faith No More days at all? Like, how did you know Mike Patton?
Okay, I met Patton
because Bungle obviously was obsessed with Slayer, right? Like, I mean, those dudes have literally said that. I'm not telling tales out of school. Like,
no, they were. They went to the show that we played in San Francisco, and when Venom went on, Patton passed out the balcony, and Trevor couldn't find him anywhere. They all had driven down from Eureka to go to that show, and
which is an investment of time. It's not that close.
It's far, and so so I met Patton probably 96, 97. It was during Faith No More's last show before they split up during that period for several years. And so it was their last show in LA. And he asked me, he said, "Oh, you play in like an avant-garde metal band, don't you?" And avant-garde, I was like, we're not that left field, you know.
You're not Fred Frith over there, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, well, no, but I like that word, that phrase. And so about a year later, maybe less than a year later, I received a phone call from him asking me if I wanted to be a part of Fantomas, and he explained to me the music, and it for some reason or another, I don't know, maybe it's just because I was really open to so many different genres of music, that when he started explaining to me, these are, short clips. He said, imagine thumbing through a comic book and each song having a different, each little square in the comic book having a different song. And I thought that was an amazing concept. And as I said, Patton, I know exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Send me the cassette, not send me the files. Send me a cassette.
Yeah, send me a cassette of that, would you? Thanks.
Yeah. So I immediately went to work and started transcribing. Actually, I had to transcribe some of the parts because they were complex. And
how does that even work? I mean, like it's crazy.
I had a book, a notation book, a book with staffs on them, so that way I could write notes, music notes, and I had this whole book full of notes and questions and little. It's like a roadmap of the song in my own language, because I didn't study music.
Right, you're not a composer, but you know what you know, right? So you have to do it in a way that works for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I was able to create my own language, and actually play and read what I'm doing and read what I'm supposed to do and what's coming up and everything, and it was challenging, but man, you wouldn't believe how much that homework helped me. When I got into the room and started working with them, when Patton opened up my book, he was like, "Damn, dude, you wrote everything out." I said, "I had to."
Well, because it's so. So that first, and I suppose most people that are either listening or watching this show are going to be familiar. But for those that aren't, that first Fantomas record is bonkers. In the fact that there's again, every song is like a comic book panel, right? There's a million of them. They're doing all this stuff. It's crazy. It doesn't necessarily make sense. The only thing I can even come close to comparing to is the Residents commercial album, but like thrash.
Yeah. The Residents, absolutely. Yeah.
Melt Banana, kinda, but like no, like it's when I first heard it, I was like, wow, is this like just a new thing? Because I don't think I've heard anything exactly like this. Like, sure, I just made two references, but it's so rare.
Yeah, it's very rare. It was unique, rare. It was creative beyond anything I had ever heard. It was.
And my first thought is, how in the world do they practice this?
Let me explain.
Okay, lay it on me.
To give you an example, we would spend about 2.5 hours on about 2 to 3 seconds of music. So imagine dead air. Okay, you're in the radio. You know what dead air is.
Yes.
And that is
Certainly
scary
do.
shit. Okay, 3 seconds feels like a half hour. You know,
You know it,
when
buddy.
you're on either television or on the radio. It's like, okay, we got to keep going. And we would work, you know, like mad, like on this one piece, just to make sure we get all the sticking correct. Like, for example, for me, I had to grab a cabasa and then throw that down, hit the bell, do a drum roll, grab a shaker, you know?
Yeah, because you're not just doing the one thing. You've got all these accoutrements, this esoteric Baroque percussion stuff. That's like,
I have to do so many different,
which is thrilling. It's awesome to be able to utilize that stuff, but when you got to remember, that like, okay, then this 12-second period, I need to like be engaging with all three of these things.
Yeah. And the joke in the studio, you know, hey, should we go over it again? And Buzz would say, it's only 2.5 seconds of our life. Why not? Oh, God.
But it seems like 2 hours at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we would go through, you know, for a while working on these parts, but we would go in at noon.
Yeah.
And work probably for 5-6 hours and take a dinner break and then come back and work for another 3 or 4. Probably from 12 to 9 with about an hour lunch or hour dinner. But we were all fueled up on coffee, Red Bull, twice brewed coffee. Have you tried that?
No, that sounds amazing.
Twice brewed coffee. So you brew your pot of coffee and then you pour it back in.
That's the water for the next. Wow. Okay. How's that? That sounds intense.
Well, you got Fantomas. That's like.
I guess the results speak for themselves, don't they? Yeah. Okay, so, and then you bring it out in the world, right? And I was lucky enough to see some of those first shows, and again, I was both pleased and like just confused, but in the best way. I've just like, my confusion was the process. Which thank you for bringing some clarity to that, because I was like, I can't even imagine what that practice room looks like.
Oh.
And to which my friend was like, I think Patton just has a comic book and he just points to the pictures. I'm like, that's probably not how they do it.
Like, no, everything, what was genius about that project is that everything was written. Everything was written and created by Patton. Patton had presented me the cassette, and when I first heard it, I was like, what do you need me for? It's
you got the record.
It's like, it's done. He said, well, I want humans to record it.
Yeah.
And instead of just one person, excuse me, I have an allergy. I got an allergy attack just before this. So if I'm like doing all this.
No, that's you're allowed. You're allowed, man.
Okay.
And as someone who suffers from allergies myself,
it's bad over here.
Yeah, I get it. And you have my entire heart right now, because I'm okay right now, but oof.
All right. Fuck, where were we? I'm sorry.
Oh, so he had everything on the tape, right? And like you have everything on there. Yeah.
He had everything on tape. And it's like, why do you? He goes, well, you know, I want a band to record it, and I want to take this out on the road.
Yeah.
And so, of course, okay, it makes sense. But all of those records were all written, and all the drum parts were on point. It was like, man, this is so great. And, you know, he's a genius. He's such an inspiration. His work ethic.
Tireless.
Tireless work ethic. His approach to music, his leadership, his kindness, he's like a brother. And there's so many good things I could say about him, you know, but you know, it's just, I'm grateful that, you know, I've been able to work with him not only on Fantomas, but he joined Dead Cross. at a time.
Which is a whole story in and of itself, right? I mean,
that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
That was funny because I'm in New Jersey and rehearsing with the Misfits. And at that time, nobody had heard, nobody knew that Misfits were going to do any shows or anything like that. And I was in the middle of this drama because the singer, rest in peace, Gabe Serbian, he couldn't continue doing the project. And so I found out that he was backing out after recording almost half of the songs.
Right.
And so I hit up Patton and I'm like, hey, would you like to join Dead Cross? Gabe isn't doing it. And he came back after a few times, when you have an iPhone and you look up and you see those 3 little dots.
Somebody's responding, they're typing, but you haven't seen the response yet.
But then the typing disappears.
Right.
And then the typing came back.
Yeah.
It's like he was, what? Should I answer? Should I not answer?
Yeah. What do I say? Yeah.
All he said was, me? You want me to do it? I said,
Yeah.
fuck yeah, Mike, come on, let's do it. And he goes, fuck yeah, I would love to. He goes, send me the music and let me check it out. And we had already released one song. So,
I remember when that came out. And because Gabe, I mean, I've had Justin on the show. I never had Gabe on, but like, he's such a unique dude. Like everything he did was like so him that you can't try to do a Gabe. Like you're not that Mike was going to, but like you wouldn't want to. It's like, no, you need to do something totally different.
Yeah. But so he had heard one song, but then when we sent him the record, what Patton brought back was totally opposite. Where Gabe was singing a chorus, Patton was singing a verse.
Right.
So there was you thought you were going to hear what Gabe did, but Patton came in at a whole different angle, which what makes Patton so special. He looks at it, he listens to music and comes in from a different place, and that's where you get that real unique and original approach to music. So
he's kind of just built his own world.
I'm not taking away anything that Gabe did.
No, but
phenomenal.
Both those dudes would be the first ones to admit that they have very different process. They're very different guys. I mean, it's and it's crazy that ostensibly Dead Cross is like a weird hardcore band, right? Like from a perspective of, when I say weird hardcore band, I mean like in the like the Locust definition of that, which is more of an open-ended format of.
Love Locust.
Yeah. Oh God, what a great band, right? And just like, oh yeah, we're gonna play this like fast aggressive music, but there's no rules to this. Like this could sound like a Devo part, and then like then it could do like a thrash thing and like whatever. And this is all the same song. Don't worry. And it's interesting because it's something that is so uniquely identified with certain people and certain bands. But the idea of it being like, because you got anytime you got JP involved, right? There's going to be some Locust stuff, but like starting out with Gabe, it's like, oh, the Locust guys are playing with Dave Lombardo is how it was characterized to me. I'm like, oh wow, that sounds cool, great. Yeah. But then when it was like, oh, but Patton's playing with it now, I'm like, whoa, really? Oh, that's crazy. And I'm not trying to discount Michael Crain's incredible contributions or anything. I'm just saying that was how it was characterized to me. That's my words. And just the idea of it being like, because you talk about your genres that have like an orthodoxy, right? I mean, as vanilla as thrash metal kind of got, as far as like, here are the rules, this is what you have to do, blah blah blah. I mean, hardcore, Jesus Christ.
The options are it's endless. You can do what you want when it comes to hardcore. So it's definitely a unique band, and love them. And I'm really lucky to be in that band as well with Patton. So awesome.
I'm glad that second record saw the light of day too. I know things were kind of
me too. Yeah,
touch and go there for a bit. Yeah.
Fuck.
It's quite the journey.
Oh my God. Yeah. Now, you just took me like to Dead Cross Rehearsal Studio, and Michael Crain, we get together like noon, and we jam for like 4 or 5 hours and record ourselves, and we come up with some of the music as well as with JP, and but one day he was late, and I was sitting outside. I was sitting on the floor of the rehearsal room, just waiting for him. I said, "You okay?" And he looked pale. He looked, he did not look happy, and how I normally see him.
Yeah.
And he said, "Dave, I have cancer." And I'm like, oh, I felt nauseous and like upset, like pissed. Not pissed at him, just at like, fuck, no,
Yeah.
And, the first thing I told him is like, 1, you're going to beat this. And 2, we're here to love and support you. And you got this. Don't worry about it. He goes, yeah, no, I know I got this. I'm going to go through it. He said, let's just record this. Let's write this album. And I said, good. Let's just stay focused. And we did. And we worked hard. I saw his progress, and it was at times really sad to see him go through all that chemotherapy. And but his perseverance and his just, his in his mind, I'm going to create this album. And that's it. We're going to finish this album. And so he did. And we were just so happy for him when we found out he was free and clear of cancer and everything. And but I remember being in the studio and him trying to eat. He was super thin. He's already a thin guy.
He wasn't like a fat dude or anything to begin with. Like, he was a pretty thin guy. Yeah.
He was very thin. And on top of that, the chemotherapy just, really, really, really affected not only his body, but, his features as well. And I remember him trying to eat, and he just couldn't hold it down. It's like, I can't eat. It's like, dude, I'll buy you a fucking Cuban sandwich. Come on, let's go.
Nice. Yeah. Man.
And he says, no, I can't, man. But he recorded everything, and we finally did it, And I love that record too.
Yeah, no, and it's sort of like there's something kind of vital about it, that it's not like it's explicitly about that or anything, but like you can almost feel that like reaching for the light kind of in it.
Wow, dude, there are parts in that sections of that album that fucking scream radiation. There's something in it, in Michael Crain's guitar sound. I don't know if it was maybe because you do, when you go through chemotherapy, radiation, you do have that that mineral or whatever the fuck it is in your body, and I don't know if maybe that radiated through his guitar pedals and his amplifier. I don't know, but some of those riffs have a very unique sound and feeling that kind of take me to that moment.
It comes across like even like somebody outside the band, like it does come across. And like I kind of had like, I actually heard it absent of knowing any of that stuff, and then I was like, oh, that actually makes sense now, because I was like, oh god, this record's got an interesting feel to it. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay, there you go. Glad I had seen the light of day, man. That's
me too.
That was a long go. I want to backtrack a little bit. I love the director's cut record.
Me too.
It's so good. First of all, genius concept. Just like, what a great concept. But then also brilliantly executed. And again, I'm going to make the assumption that most people like that are interacting with the show know what that is. But the second Fantomas album is ostensibly themes from horror films and TV shows that are reinterpreted as Fantomas songs. And I think in the hands of a lesser band that wouldn't work. But I mean, because you got like, what the Henry Mancini one. There's like the Omen. Like it's all these like instantly recognizable Rosemary's Baby. Jesus Christ, I forget Rosemary's Baby.
Creepy.
Yeah, like where you're just like, oh,
The
Godfather as the first song, which is definitely a statement of intent. You know, Twin Peaks. You know, just like some of the best composers of film and television of all time, and then reinterpreting them and making them into Fantomas songs, but then also honoring the original. That is not just a balance beam, man. That's like a string that you're walking across with that.
And it's done so well, and it's very respectful to the original pieces.
Yes.
It wasn't in any way, you know, chopped up in some way or form, and it's just disrespectful towards the composer. No, it was very respectful and you know, done very well. I love that album. That was so great. I remember there was a part in Rosemary's Baby where you hear a music box.
Right.
So
yeah.
We got several, like 2 or 3 music boxes, but we flipped the keys and the notes on the music box. Now, unscrewed, you know, the little keys.
Oh, where it has the where you can look around them.
Flip the keys. And we unscrewed them, flipped the keys, and then when you play it, it makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. And that's what you hear in there is like 2 or 3 different music boxes with the keys flipped. So
which is just deeply unsettling. It's just deeply like super creep. You know, as
we wanted a music box sound, but we didn't want a particular song. And when you did those music boxes, you know, when you wind up those music boxes, it was a particular song that was
like
very
Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something, or
very recognizable.
Yeah.
So you had to make sure that it was something. It needed to sound very different, and we did it. So much experimenting went on with that album, which taught me a lot in creating my own body of work, and how you need to be very selective with your instruments. The percussions that I used, you know, I was very selective. It's like, oh no, this doesn't sound right. It needs to be like this, you know. And I saw Patton do that, you know, throughout all the records I recorded with him, you know, and it taught me a lot, you know, and being very critical about tone and sound, and you know, the amount of reverb and or how dead you want it to sound, and or compressed. So, you know, that was a very educational moment or period of my life working on those albums.
How did that even come to pass? Because and you bring up a good point too, because that's a great headphone record, right? Like if you're wearing headphones and listening to that record, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Yeah. Like it's you know, it's designed for that kind of experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not, you know, however people choose to experience that is their own journey.
Yeah, of course.
That's for them.
It's wild, yeah.
But I think that like, did it start as a concept first? Like, was there like one song that like, hey, let's do this for like? How does that? It's just such an ambitious project.
I honestly don't know. That's more of a question for Patton.
Yeah.
We received the demos as a whole.
He just came in like fully formed from the head of Zeus. Here's what we're doing. Okay.
Here it is. This is what I'm trying to do. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was challenging, but it was a lot easier than the first album for sure.
Well, sure, because it's such a whiplash from the experience of the first one.
The little sections. You know, this was actually, oh wow, I could play a thrash beat for a while.
Yeah. And it totally works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I loved, you know, I thought those shows were great too. The big band shows were cool. I like the record that came off of those shows also. I thought that was like a neat idea of just like, oh yeah, let's just have both bands like.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
We're just gonna mix them, mix and match.
Yeah.
We get to have some neat results from that. You know, it's not boring. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. That was very exciting. Yep.
Did you find what I meant to ask earlier too? when you first start, because all right, Slayer definitely has like a thrash there's a Slayer audience, which is like unique to Slayer almost, but and then you have like you're working in like these industrial genres, right? And like with these industrial bands, was it kind of like a bit of a head trip to be with like in the Fantomas crowds? Because at first it was like there wasn't a Fantomas crowd. It was just like, oh, here are these dudes. It's like Buzz and Patton and Lombardo and then like you get curious Mr. Bungle people, but like what is what kind of crowd is it at first for you?
Curious.
And I say that as someone that was in the crowd, by the way, but I'm like, what kind of crowd is it? Yeah, but
a very curious crowd. And, I think their curiosity was definitely, was met with something they didn't even expect. And, it was funny. Every now and then, somebody would yell out, "Angel of Death!"
Sure, yeah.
In the middle of one of the most quiet parts of the performance.
Yeah.
Where Patton is just whispering or he's singing in a very melodic tone. And, somebody else, "Slayer!"
Yeah. Great. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Play a song.
Right. But it just occurs to me that like, and I think there's more precedent for it now, but the idea of it being, when people think of, and I find the word supergroup disdainful and reductive, frankly, but it's not like it's like Cream or like the Yardbirds or Blind Faith or something, right? It's like no, these are guys that are all super interesting and skilled at what they do, but it's not the same thing. And then they come together and it's like something, oh yeah, this is totally different. This is like an entirely different meal, like suddenly, like this is, which, and again, now I think there's more of a precedent for it, but especially, in that, like late 90s, like it was sort of like, huh, what, really?
Very early 2000s. I think that first album came out in 2000.
Was it 2000? Okay, maybe.
99, 2000. I know they came out pretty quick. Right. We were on tour and then back in the studio, back on tour, back in the studio. Yeah.
It's just, it's such a big swing, like, and I love it for that. And I think that, again, following it up with director's cut, great, like, like what was it, Delirium Coda after that? Like, I mean, it's just like none of these records are remotely alike in any way, shape, or form, which is, which the guys yelling Slayer songs maybe are not that into, but
yeah. No, they didn't come back. They didn't come back.
They came the one time. They did not, in fact, hear Rain and Blood.
I couldn't headbang. I was only able to headbang for like 2 bars, and that was it.
Tactical headbanging, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just,
you better get it, or
yeah, enjoy it now, buddy.
Yeah.
That mosh pit's gonna dry up in the next measure.
Yep.
Well, and then okay, so I want to. So at some point, it was about like 10, 12 years ago at this point. You got back together with the Slayer guys, like,
no, it's been 10 years since I last left.
Oh my God, really? Okay, sorry. Well, it feels like 10 years since last week to me. So, and again, this isn't the Slayer cast or anything, but like getting back with those dudes as an adult, right? And as an adult with like everyone's got their lived experience from where they're at then versus when stuff passed. How did that hit? How did it feel like getting back and playing with those guys, making those records and stuff? Like, how did that feel? Like, was that
cool? To quote Tom Araya, it was like putting on an old pair of shoes. That's what it was like. Like, oh, okay, I remember this.
Fantastic.
Back in the saddle again. Yep.
Yeah.
And it went on for a good 12 years, I think. 13 years until I left in 2000. Because I got back in 2001.
Right.
Early 2002. And then I left 2013.
That's right. That was it was World Painted Blood was the last record, right? I know that too, but it's because we were talking about all this like late 90s, early 2000 stuff is why I was like, oh yeah, that just happened, right? No, it didn't. Yeah. That was a long time ago.
Oh, it was long. Yep. Many years ago.
Yeah, wow. I feel like, yeah, it has to be. Well, and the reason I bring it up because you've gone and done all this other stuff, right? You've made all this adventurous music. Basically built an entirely new fan base, doing other things, this and that, and to come back to it, like, is it surreal? Does it feel like time travel when you were doing it? Like, I mean, is it? Does it just make sense? It's all rock and roll.
It made sense. I was out of the band for 10 years.
Yeah.
10, 11 years, and they decided to bring me back in, and yeah, everything was good and everything felt fine. It was we had a good run.
Yeah.
I was able to bring like my own creativity, or at least it was difficult to change the Slayer path. They really liked what they had, their niche market, and they didn't want to stray too much. But in a live sense, I was able to be free when it came to like some of the drum rolls and some of the changes. I used to throw the guys in the band, for a loop when I would create a really bizarre drum roll, and it makes them turn around. It's like, what the fuck is that? And then I land on the one. It's like, there it is, but I was getting creative, I think because, it was, I knew the music so well. And so there was room for me to fuck around. It's like, why didn't I record this? Why didn't I play this drum part when I recorded the album? It would have been so much better,
Right, right. Yeah.
After you played something for so long. I mean, the Rolling Stones, I read once that Mick Jagger said, God, I wish we would have written that song Satisfaction a little better if I knew we were going to play it
every night for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Years. So I was going through a little bit of the same thing, with my own drum parts. It's
sure,
like,
yeah.
I'm going to do this. Oh, that double bass section in Angel of Death. Well,
right.
You know what? I'm going to extend it a little longer, or I'm going to add a snare roll in the middle of it. And, so I was just having fun with it. And it was because I was, I guess, seasoned from the musicians I was working with in the past. And that kind of helped, I think, helped me personally to enjoy the moments on stage, because when you're on tour and playing the same songs month after month, year after year, it becomes a little redundant. You can get,
it's easy to get not really feel the magic in it necessarily anymore.
Right. And so that kind of helped me entertain myself on stage. It's like, see how I could, if I could stump the guitar players, if I could mess with them.
Well, especially, so that God Hates Us All record, right? Like, I feel like there was definitely, like, I'm going to try to choose my words carefully here. I feel like it kind of gave the band a shot in the arm of like,
I didn't, just FYI, I didn't record that album.
Okay. I must be
Paul. It's okay. Paul Bostaff recorded that album.
I'm thinking the one after that. What's the one? Christ Illusion. Right. Yeah. I think that's the one to think of. Sorry, I don't have my discography in front of me.
It's okay. You got all the other ones right.
I gotta say, if it's if it's baseball, I'm doing great.
You are.
But I like that you brought in some of like the more crazy, maybe to the thrash fans, oblique things to it. But it still but it was without like being a genre exercise or like pushing that band like necessarily to something that people weren't looking for from that band. It seemed like everyone was like fully on board with all of it. It just was like, it's such a rare story to have somebody like leave an iconic band like that and then come back and like, oh no, this is awesome. Like, it's usually like, oh, we're going to play the hits now, everybody. We're, 1, 2, 3, here we go. Yeah. And it just didn't occur to me that at all. And like, the only reason I'm even despite me getting the discography completely wrong. The only reason I really bring it up is because it's kind of a rare story, and
Yeah, it is.
I don't know why.
That, but I don't know. Asking that question is like asking, why Fantomas?
Sure, yeah. Well, why not?
Know. Everything that I'm involved with or revolves around me is sometimes a little odd. Things just take interesting turns. In my life.
Did you ever think you'd be playing in Mr. Bungle?
No.
So that's about the one of the only things we haven't talked about, frankly. I mean, and I say this as like, I love that band's whole catalog. I think the California record is one of the great underrated pop masterpieces of the last 30 years. I've had two of those fellas on the show, and one of them, like, after this happened, again, massive head fake to like, oh, it's the Mr. Bungle thrash record. Okay. And like the fact that it's Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny demo is the name is like hilarious to me. I think it was Trey who was talking about how he liked that demo being in the title. I'm like, that's such a Trey thing to say, but okay.
Yeah. Well, we were on tour. Just a quick little like the inside story.
Yeah,
we were on tour with Dead Cross, and Trey's band Secret Chiefs 3 was opening up for the show. And we were in Brooklyn at the Warsaw Theater. I believe it's Brooklyn. And Trevor Dunn shows up. And so I'm chatting with Trevor and Patton, and then Trey comes up and we start all talking together, and then we take with my camera, I have like a series of photographs of our first meeting together.
Nice.
And we're all laughing, we're all joking and whatever. And under like Trevor, under his breath, he says, "Is this the new Mr. Bungle?" And just says, and I didn't think anything of it. I knew that they were a thrash band, but I never thought that something like that was going to happen. But now, 2020 hindsight, looking back, it's like I see what they were thinking. And then, they got one of their favorite, guitar players from that era, and it just made it all perfect. It was like the perfect fit. And Scott Ian, he's such an amazing rhythm guitar player.
He really is.
Yeah. I told him he's the Malcolm Young of metal.
Oh, that's all I was gonna say, which is like the best compliment you could ever give someone that's played rhythm guitar. Frankly, I think. But I agree.
Like his rhythm guitar playing is just so on point.
Yeah,
I love it. And I love jamming with him. We lock in really well. And for that kind of music, you got to have that foundation, man.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I don't know. I'm honored that they've asked me, to be a part of it, and it's been such a great ride. And the emails, the correspondence between all the members of the band is hilarious.
I'm sure. I can only imagine. Yeah.
The memes that we receive. Like, oh no, I don't want to open this. What is
Make sure you're in a safe area.
Jimmy out and taking a shit on somebody.
Yeah. For a laugh. Well, and it's so. I think that there obviously is a lot of excitement for just any iteration of Bungle, which is another band that is not big on repeating itself at all.
Right.
Everyone Again, I'm old enough to remember when California came out, there were a lot of people that were like, "Oh, what's this? This Beach Boys crap. I'm not here for this." And then, it's everyone's favorite record 3 years later. But, but I think there's also like basically a whole generation of music fans that have kind of come up that never got to see that band play. So there's always a question of like, well, are they ever going to play any of the old songs anymore? It's like, well, it's kind of like, it's 60% the same guys, but like it's kind of like a new version of the band. Uh-huh. Did that does that ever come up, or is it more just like, hey, this is what this band does?
Oh no, it comes up. It comes up a lot,
Yeah.
Now, whether we do something or not, that's the big question, but it does come up. Oh, I hope you guys play something off their first one,
Yeah, I'm sure. You can hope all you want. Was it
Yeah.
hope in one hand and poop in the other? Is that the same?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta go to the show and experience it to know what's going on, if that ever happens, But yeah, it's always a surprise with those guys. I never know
Well,
what they throw at me, like musically. It's what song do you want to do now? Yeah.
Right. Well, because I'm just thinking of that night they came home. Well, I guess it's an album now, but like the show as well. Like I.
Yeah.
Like, the Hell Awaits in Summer Breeze. I mean, that's
Right.
hilarious. But I didn't expect Loss of Control too, and I'm a big Van Halen fan. I was like, wow.
And in South America, performed "Welcome Back, Cotter."
Right. Exactly.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Because we had a couple shows that were sellout shows, and so we wanted to play something, kind of tongue in cheek, funny kind of thing, and "Welcome Back" was perfect.
It's such an interesting vibe, and I like that. And in fact, I think I don't remember if it's Trey or Trevor, but I had one of those fellas on. Well, I've had Trevor on a few times, but right before the thing at the library, was it the library? The Eureka?
The Eureka Public Library.
That's right. And it had like there was like David Yao and like in the audience, and like in the whole, it was a produced affair. Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And Rollins was there. Yeah.
It was just such a nice, like if it makes sense for me, I'll say that like that was one of the moments of like, hey, I think everything's gonna be all right, guys. Like that was one of the moments where I'm like, we're gonna be able to figure a way through this. I don't know what it's gonna look like because there's this, but we're gonna be able to figure this out. And I was very sick of seeing people playing acoustic guitar at their webcam at that moment in time. I'm glad that.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that.
It's
yeah. Hey, let's do push-ups.
Yeah.
I'm like, I challenge you. It's like, fuck off. I'm on my couch. Leave me alone.
I'm not gonna do that, man. I'm totally not gonna do that. Yeah, it's remember when everyone was baking bread for like a minute? It was like, why is everyone baking bread suddenly? Sorry, too soon.
Yeah.
Too soon.
No, it's true. It's true.
So playing these Bungle shows, that's a band that without being like how Slayer's fans connect to it, that is, I feel like the most Patton's fans, like they reach peak fandom with Bungle, I feel. And maybe that's not the case on the inside, but people really engage with Bungle, like with whatever Bungle is doing. Is that anything that like does it just feel like you're just doing your thing? Is that like, do you feel any like weird pressure or anything with that, or what?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm around, musicians that, we all basically think the same, and we're all a bit quirky, and so there's no surprise to that, and there's no pressure. We just do our thing, and when I remember Patton years ago, I mean, oh God, this had to have been during the Fantomas years. He wanted to re-record that song "Lost Control" by Van Halen.
So good. I mean, and that's like not even like a level people know Van Halen song. It's like arguably not even B level.
It's not Jump.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even.
So when I think we were throwing ideas on what songs to do, what cover songs we should do. I brought that one to his attention because I believe he might have forgotten that he wanted to do that song. And it was an immediate like, yes, I'd love to do that one.
Right.
And it was exciting because I've loved Van Halen too, and to play that one was a real treat, because it has obviously the double bass.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the other double bass guy.
Yeah. So I liked his work, and so and I feel it was at a time that it was a perfect time to recreate that song and record it.
It was unexpected, to tell you that much, but I was pretty stoked.
Yeah. Very unexpected.
I mean, I think that it happening at all is pretty unexpected. Of course, there's a bunch of tour dates coming up for Bungle with the Mighty Melvins, and that's exciting.
Yeah, all on the West Coast. So you guys on the East Coast don't get it until fall. You guys don't get it until the fall.
Exactly. But what I do want to mention before I let you go, and Dave, this has been great. Thank you so much for doing it and being so cool with all this. I do want to mention that Rites of Percussion is available on Ipecac, and that folks should pick it up. It's a hard record when you're just like, yeah, it's a bunch of drums and percussion, but no, it's okay, it's cool. Like, like it's interesting. Like it's a real interesting record, and I think that real interesting isn't always a compliment. But I do mean it as a compliment. There's a craft to it, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. It was a creative, experiment. It was, it's something I've always wanted to do, and I had the support of, one of the musicians that I admire the most.
Yeah,
and I've been around many musicians that have created very bizarre bodies of work, and there's still like I just picked up a Penderecki, the composer.
Oh, I love Penderecki. I mean,
fucking eerie,
yeah,
scary as fuck.
You don't throw it on at a party, but maybe a David Lynch party. I don't know.
You want people to leave your house after a party? Throw on some Penderecki.
I used to work at a record store, and I would actually throw on Penderecki. I want to get people out the door when we were trying to close. And you know what? Always worked. Wesley Willis was the other one, by the way.
And I bought the record the other day, and I listened to it, and it's like a horror movie. Yeah. 15 minutes of you're just engulfed in basically hell, and the very last note that he hits is on a piano, and I swear it's the Apple, when you turn on your Apple computer.
The startup sound, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The Apple, it was that chord. I'm like, fucking genius, man. Yeah. So, after, being around Fantomas and John Zorn and exploring all these weird genres of music and how free and liberating that is, instead of being, in one genre.
Yeah, doing one thing.
Doing one thing, which I've done for months and years. It's free. It's what I think an artist should be able to do, is experiment. If you paint, why limit yourself to 4 colors, man? Why don't you use the entire, a rainbow of colors to make a piece, or to choose, just same thing with musicians. I understand we all have our fortes, which I have my own, but to venture off and do something like this, it just shows, that you're open and willing to create outside of what you're known for.
Yeah, and have it be more than just, look, I love Buddy Rich, but he has those records where it's just him doing solos, and it's like, yeah, it's great. It's almost as great as him yelling at his band, but
yeah,
but
I wanted to avoid
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Many of those records, and even modern records, not like 50s, 60s, but, you know, in the 2000s of drummers creating solo records. But it's really not solo record. It's like you're playing a bunch of covers and then adding your own drum solos to them.
Right. Right.
Like, that is awesome. Fantastic. I'd love to do that someday. But right now I want it to really, like, you know, make an immediate lift.
Yeah, that's not what this is. This is like this is composed. That's good.
Yeah.
It's composed work, you know, like they're songs. They serve the criteria of being songs.
Drum songs, yeah.
Yeah, they're drum songs.
They have a beginning and an end.
You know, it's really, and I think anyone that's a fan of your drumming will find a lot to love on that record. I think it's super cool, man, and I'm so stoked that you came on to talk about that, and apparently literally everything else.
And everything else. Hey, when is he going to ask a question about my record?
Yeah, exactly. I'm here for this record.
God, I have a 40-year career behind.
Yeah. This is a lot to chat about. You just got to come on again, man. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure. It's been great.
Last thing, Dave, and thank you so much for being so generous for your time. This is the only canned question that I ever ask folks, so you can choose to interpret it however you like.
Okay.
Why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I get enjoyment. Like, there's something very fulfilling and gratifying about, you know, from going on stage and playing in front of crowds and seeing the look on their face, and, you know, how happy they are, and their excitement, enthusiasm. You know, the pleasure of recording an album and then going back home after it's all done and released, and then listening to it and then reflecting on, you know, the experience you had recording, you know, a piece of work like that. It's like a time capsule, I think, for the artist. And I love that. I don't see myself ever retiring. You know, I want to continue doing this until I can't anymore. It's how much I love it. It makes me feel I'm 18 again. You know, whenever I'm on stage playing, you can rest assured, if you ever see me on stage playing drums, he feels like he's a kid. And that's every time. It's just the excitement, the adrenaline, the anxiety I get that rips through my stomach. You know, it's like, oh, fuck. And then, you know, looking at my notes, and I got to remember that section in the song. I don't want to fuck it up. And, you know, all this, you know, just everything that goes with making sure that you deliver a flawless show. I love all that anxiety, everything that goes with it, all the preparation. So there, in a nutshell, I guess.
I love it. Dave, thanks so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, man. Thank you so much.
All right, take care, brother. Safe travels.
Hey, yo.
All right, there he goes, Mr. Dave Lombardo. I'll throw a link to Rites of Percussion in the show notes so everyone can pick that up. And I'll actually play something. I'll play something from that too. Why not? It's my show. I'll do what I want. Damn it. This is Journey of the Host. There you go. One of the many awesome tunes off of the Dave Lombardo's new record, Rites of Percussion. Get that at Ipecac Recordings. Of course, you can catch Dave. Catch him. I don't know if you're catching him or not. You can see him play with Mr. Bungle and Melvins and Spotlights. West Coast. You got May 11th, 13th, 16th, 17th, 19th, 21st, 23rd. Playing Sick New World Festival as well. Put that in the show notes also. What a cool guy. That was awesome. I hope you guys enjoy that. Of course, the name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you ever so very much for listening to it. This show airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, live, streaming on YouTube, streaming on Twitch. You can find all the archives available at ProtonicReversal.com. Always free, no ads, no sponsors, no kidding. However, if you like the show and you want to get episodes sooner, that is something that can be achieved by go to patreon.com/ProtonicReversal, paying $1 a month for early access for everything.
Signing off, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
A lot of stuff coming up for Caterwaul Month.
Anyone within the sound of my voice.
Brett Bradford, Scratch Acid, coming up next week. And we're going to be putting a video from his new band. So stay tuned.
50,000 watts of power.
Again, if you like the show and you want to share the episodes around, like, subscribe, post a review, all that biz, it's always appreciated. Thank you ever so much for doing that. Helps beat back the almighty algorithm.
This microphone turns sound into electricity.
Most of all, thank you so much for hanging out and staying with me. Stay safe out there.
Out on Route 128, dark
Take it
and
easy.
lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 See in the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. There is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,